The Florida Panthers stubbed their toe in the first game post-All-Star break after a promising first 20 minutes, only for the Philadelphia Flyers to flip the script and get the 2 road points.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, February 7th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're to your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at Monoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. So, Florida Panthers, Philadelphia Flyers tonight from Emirates Bank Arena. It was a game where we spoke all about really how the Florida Panthers really need to take advantage of the Flyers on special teams. And although they got a goal in the first period early by Carter Verhaeghe, and after the first 20 minutes for the Panthers, it was really the Philadelphia Flyers flipping the script, scoring the last two unanswered, and giving the Florida Panthers a 2-1 loss. There's no points coming out of the All-Star break. But it is a Wednesday, which means it is a Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Jacob Winans is back. And Jacob, first time that we're getting together in the last 2 weeks, and this one coming in a loss. Welcome back to the show, unfortunately, coming here with a loss for the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, thanks for having me as usual. It was definitely a tough one. Selfishly, I was hoping for a win. I'm exhausted. You were traveling. I know you were traveling. I was traveling as well. Just got back from a trip to Boston, and I've been all over the place. So I was really excited to get to South Florida and go to this game. And kind of a dud. Not the best night at Emirates Bank Arena for sure.
Yeah, and speaking about the night for the Panthers at Emirates Bank Arena, I mean, Stolarz is in net. I mean, this was the plan the whole time. He even went home and practiced with his and brought his gear with him for practice. And the plan was always for him to start on the night. And really, the biggest takeaway for me in this one is what the Philadelphia Flyers were doing in the final 40 minutes for this one. I mean, it looked so promising for the Panthers. I mean, Nico Mikkola was getting up in the rush, breaking up some, also keeping some eyes on Travis Konechny really early as well as he was getting through the zone, breaking up entries as well for the Flyers as well. Nick Cousins, very, very active on the forecheck. You could tell he was really amped to get back after a month of not playing hockey as well after the injury that happened in Arizona. But really, after that, it really not necessarily fell apart immediately for the Panthers. I mean, the Flyers in the second period, they were mostly dominant in the first part of the second period and the final part of the second period. But really, their goal came in a part where they weren't even dominating the period as well. And that was after the under 14 timeout, where two shots on goal combined prior to the first goal by Travis Konechny, where the Panthers got a little bit lost in a line change, the long shift, the long change as well. But it was also really about the Philadelphia Flyers and their ability to protect the middle of the ice. Sam Reinhart gets no shots on goal on the night as well. We saw on one of the power plays that the feed that Tkachuk tried to Reinhart was not there, and even him trying to take it himself too on the night as well. And that's basically really the takeaway for me as well for this one. And just second chance opportunities, they weren't there for the Panthers, and block shots as well. The Flyers really made it easy for Samuel Ersson on the night as well. What are your takeaways as far as tonight?
Yeah, I thought the first period was pretty much perfect hockey. I think the Panthers played a 9 out of 10 first period. The only thing that would have made that a 10 would have been a little bit more finishing luck. They couldn't really finish their opportunities, and the finishing is becoming a bit of a problem again. We've seen stretches where the Panthers have struggled to score. The Panthers have really struggled to score on 5-on-5 for a few games now, and it's kind of been masked by their power play being really, really good lately. And we haven't really talked about their 5-on-5 struggles, but we're back in that same boat. And they lost a bunch of games earlier in the season when they couldn't score 5-on-5 and the power play was ice cold. They've been able to get wins with special team scoring, but right now in a game in this game, they get a power play goal, and again the 5-on-5 dries up completely, and that's really the difference. But I think effort-wise, the Panthers' effort tonight was nowhere near what it's going to need to be for the rest of the season to win games and go into the playoffs comfortable about the way you're playing. We can discuss depth scoring. It's a problem. We can discuss, we can debate whether or not the Panthers should have changed the lineup after winning 4 straight, whether or not it made more sense to go with what was working. We can debate that all night long. We can talk about Stolarz, how his second goal probably is one he'd like to have back. He had a pretty solid game overall, but you'd like to get a save on that one. And Sam Bennett has a chance in the third period where he could have put the Panthers up 2-1, and maybe it ends up being a 2-1 game for Florida. But despite all that, they had their chances, and it was a couple costly errors that sort of ruined the game for them. But none of that really matters when you look at the effort, because it shouldn't have come down to any of that. The effort tonight was severely lacking. It was about as sluggish a game as I've seen them play since their 3-0 loss to Winnipeg way earlier in the season, which ironically I was at that one as well. And I feel like the leg, they didn't have the legs, the passes weren't crisp. Everyone was kind of looking at the next guy, waiting for the next guy to make a play. And it's becoming a little obvious now that the attempts to force feed Reinhart, especially on the power play, Barkov has to become a shooting threat again. Matthew Tkachuk has to at least look at the opportunity to shoot or go cross crease when he gets the puck down on the goal line. It can't immediately just be eyes on Reinhart. It's almost like a quarterback staring down a receiver. It makes it very easy for a defense if you're staring down your receiver. And I think the Panthers need to at least make Barkov a shooting threat on that side, because when the puck is on that side, no one cares that Barkov has it. They know he's going to Tkachuk, and they know Tkachuk is looking for Reinhart. You've got to make them a shooting threat on that side, and I think that was really the difference. I felt like effort and then trying to force things in the third period that just weren't there.
Yeah, Barkov without a goal since December 16th on the road against the Edmonton Oilers, who right now the Edmonton Oilers, as we speak, are leading 1-0 against the Vegas Golden Knights for an opportunity to tie the longest winning streak in NHL history, to give you guys an idea of when we're recording this. But also this, I think this really gives an opportunity now that teams are honing in on the middle of the ice for Sam Reinhart there. Listen, he'll need 22 goals in the next 32 games to even tie Pavel Bure's record. I don't know how much of a drop-off that will be, if there is one as well, but I know that there will definitely be adjustments. But this is also a time for Barkov to think a little bit of, okay, now they're protecting the middle of the ice. Now it's time for maybe me to go for him to go below the hashes and attempt something there, especially on the power play as well, from the right flank, especially because they know that guys are going to be drawing towards Sam Reinhart. So that definitely that's an adjustment that I think is going to be made for the last next few days. Also, Paul Maurice was also asked about Nick Cousins and the effort that he had the start, and then that was asked by Kobe Guy, and then Paul Maurice was quick to redirect and saying that his line mates didn't really help him out on the night as well, and even put his hand over the shoulder of Kobe as well, without being mean, of course, for Paul Maurice as well. So you can kind of get a little bit of an indication of the frustration level of Maurice on the night. Said that they were prepared. that they were not prepared, but kind of knew. And that's a little bit of something that we can go into segment number 3, talk more about in segment number 3 as well. But also, puck wasn't deep enough as well on that long change as well. And it was the Panthers struggling to get out of their zone as well. And the entries weren't clean. Gus Forsling, a little bit of an errant pass that results in the Noah Cates goal, which was only his second of the season as well. And it's just the Panthers, as far as that, they just really couldn't get going at 5-on-5. And the power play was bailing them out. But there's only so much. What you're not going to get a whole bunch of power plays in the playoffs. That's the thing. And hopefully this is just one unusual night where the Panthers got their first regulation loss when they scored first, and their first home loss in regulation when they went into the third period with it being tied. So those are a little bit of that of stats for as far as the Panthers, as far as this being an unusual territory for them. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more about when we thought this game was won or lost for the Panthers and our 3 duds of the game. We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. And happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. FanDuel has so many ways that you could end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win the Super Bowl, but also FanDuel has bets for which player will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers can join today, and you'll get it to $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and the official sports betting partner of the NFL. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now you can also find it on Amazon Fire TV. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today channel now on Amazon Fire TV. Back on this Wednesday, February 7th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Wednesday edition of the show, a Winans Wednesday. And Jacob, let's discuss more about when we thought this game was won or lost. In this case, lost for the Panthers. And it was when the Panthers failed to convert on the power play in which Nico Mikkola was boarded by Owen Tippett, which, like I said earlier, the Panthers, for the most part, kept Owen Tippett in check. Great story of what has happened in Philadelphia with his development. Wasn't going to find that here. But a little bit of a dirty play for Owen Tippett there. But the Panthers' failure to convert and the outside shots, the perimeter shots that the Panthers had, mostly in the final 40, that was that moment where it says, I don't think it's going to happen for the Panthers. And again, usually for the Panthers coming out of breaks, they get off to they get off to great starts coming out of breaks. My hope is that this is just one bump in the road for the Panthers, as the Flyers had to come into this one desperate. They were losers of 4 straight as well, and all. And this was just you saw the desperation coming out of the break for the Flyers. When was your moment where you thought this game was lost for the Panthers?
Mine, it was actually tied 1-1 when this happened, but I believe it was on the 4-on-4. Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Bennett get a 2-on-1, and Tkachuk puts a perfect saucer pass over to Bennett, and Bennett goes backhand. Looked like he had a sure goal. And Ersan makes the save with a pretty ridiculous pad stretch. Goes full split. Looked like it rolled a little on Bennett. I didn't have the best view of it, but it looked like it rolled off his stick a little, and he tried to tuck it in with his backhand. He gets stopped. I remember saying right after that happened, I was like, that was their chance. I think after they didn't score that one, it was such a tight checking game. Philly wasn't giving up many odd man rushes. They weren't giving up a lot of open ice. It felt like a game where you were going to get one shot, and if you didn't bury it, then you weren't going to win the game, at least not in regulation. And when Sam Bennett gets stopped on that chance, that was I kind of knew at that point that we weren't going to score, and I think that was kind of the moment where we lost the game. But I will preface that by saying that shouldn't have been the moment. It shouldn't have come down to one chance. So the blame for this loss does not in any way fall on Sam Bennett. He got stopped on a good chance. It happens. It's a 50-50 play, and it didn't land on his side of the coin this time. But it shouldn't have come down to a situation where the Panthers only had one opportunity to bury a goal to take the lead, and that really felt like their only quality scoring chance the entire rest of the game. So for me, it was third period. Early in the period, Bennett has a chance and gets stopped, and I just kind of felt like we really lost control after that offensively. It was all Philly from that point.
Yeah, and even before the Noah Cates scored that goal, which was 2:37 in, I mean, quickly Joe Farabee has a breakaway, and where Anthony Stolarz has a save where he kicks it out as well. And also going back to that breakaway on the 4-on-4, I mean, the speed that Sam Bennett had, where the two Flyers players draw towards Tkachuk, I mean, and then driving to the net backhand, man, missed opportunity for the Panthers there. And also, I thought that even after the Flyers tied it, I mean, the Panthers had a little bit of a sense of urgency there too, as far as puck possession there. And then really after that, you saw a different one for the Panthers really 2 minutes after the goal, which Konechny scored on as well. 3 duds. I'm gonna go quickly on this one. 3 duds for me are Sam Reinhart, no shots on goal for the night for him. Gus Forsling, the errant pass that created the goal by Noah Cates, and Aaron Ekblad not closing in on the gap to allow the shot in the first place as well. And I'm gonna also go with Alexander Barkov as well on the night for as far as duds of the game for the Panthers. I mean, also faceoffs aren't the be all end all, but the fact that Philly was able to win and then get shots immediately or get passes out of the zone as well, which, man, when you really think about, again, going back to the whole first period where the Flyers were struggling to break it out and the Panthers were getting in on the forecheck, man, did that flip in the final 20 for the Flyers. 3 duds for you, my friend.
Yep, I'll start with 2 honorable mentions. One is Barkov. He had a really poor game. I don't want to give him a full dud because he did have a great scoring chance in the first period where we could be telling a whole different story about him, and it hit the post. So unfortunate. Mm-hmm. Another honorable mention for me is TJ Luxmore. Had a awful third period officiating, just terrible. Misses a blatant trip on Nick Cousins that could have given the Panthers a power play, and misses a very obvious holding the stick where Evan Rodriguez had a chance to pick up a rebound and gets tackled to the ground by his stick. So TJ Luxmore, another masterclass of screwing the Panthers. My 3 duds, Gus Forsling had a really poor game, really bad turnover. It ends up costing them the game. Uncharacteristic of him, he's had a great season. Sam Reinhart, it's really not acceptable for Reinhart to have 0 shots on goal in a game. Even if they're not high quality, you got to at least get something towards the net if you're a player of Reinhart's caliber. You never know if it can take a bounce, get a rebound, a deflection. You got to get something towards the net. So again, uncharacteristic for him. Not worried about him repeating that, but 0 shots on goal is not great. And he's going to have to get used to the attention that he's going to draw defensively with the season he's having. And my last dud for the night is Brandon Montour. I really don't know what he was doing most of the night. The first goal, Travis Konechny, it looked like he was playing center field, trying to field a pop fly the way Montour was standing at the blue line, just kind of watching the ball go over his head. It looked like a center fielder watching the ball travel over the center field wall for a home run. He didn't really try to move. He just kind of watched it, which was weird. And I think on the power play, he shot straight into some shot blocks. He shot wide a bunch. I felt like he didn't have good command of quarterbacking the power play tonight. And just he was out of position a lot. A couple of bad changes. One of them results in a goal. So Brandon Montour, another dud, and he's starting to pile some of those up a little bit. I'm not panicking, but the concern level with Brandon Montour's game is slightly elevated right now because he really has not found his stride this season at all. And I don't know if it's contract pressure, the fact that he didn't really get an off season at all, but his game is very clearly off. So he's my third dud for the night.
Yeah, and also Brandon Montour spoke about how the break was good for him because he didn't have that off-season preparation necessary as well. So something to consider with that for Montour. Also, let's this looks ugly now. Looking and refreshing natural stat trick: 66 total shot attempts in all situations for the Panthers. Only 21 of them got onto the net, while only 43 of the shot attempts were unblocked as well. So, and then 22 more of them flat out missed the net as well. So just a little too quick for the can't have that as well for on when the talent level is just so different. But let's also remember who the coach is for the Philadelphia Flyers is on the other side. It's never going to be an easy night for anyone, and the Panthers are going to see them two more times in the next 32 games as well. So we're going to see the direction one way or the other where the Philadelphia Flyers will go, which many think that they could possibly fall off, and Pittsburgh could be creeping up on them as well. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we're going to discuss more about what Paul Maurice spoke about this morning and discussing the mindset now that the game has happened and the Panthers did not get any of the 2 points. We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. And we're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search and match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed just doesn't help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to the other job sites, according to the recent Indeed study. And listeners to the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Third and final segment here on this Wednesday, February 7th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Wednesday, a Winans Wednesday edition of the show. The Florida Panthers are coming off a 2-1 home loss against the Philadelphia Flyers post All-Star break, with their 4-game winning streak coming to an end. And Jacob, I want to talk more about something that Paul Maurice spoke about this morning, about knowing what was coming for the Florida Panthers facing off against the Philadelphia Flyers, and just knowing how this wasn't going to. It wasn't going, he said, quote, that it was not going to be an up and down type of game. Knowing, and again, going back to the whole desperation for the opposition with Philadelphia, they just snapped the 5-game losing streak. They looked like they were free falling coming out of going into the break. Their goal differential is right at 0 now after tonight's game, to give you a little bit of an idea about where they are. They're not blowing teams out of the way. But also, about coming out of this now. Yeah, there was time off. Yeah, the players also discussed more about how they're more than okay with the break coming, even with a 4-game winning streak. I'm still under the mindset of, even though they lost tonight, that the break was still good for them as well in this instance as well. And yeah, this is like I said at the top, it's a stub of the toe for the team. But still, when you think about Barkov, what he said the other day, these guys just don't forget how to play hockey as well. And for different sections of the season, it's hard to carry one of momentum going into a break and then coming out of a break with that same with the same momentum as well. And yeah, Mackey's not with the team right now. He's back in Charlotte as well. So as far as Maurice's comments, and also coming out of the break and seeing what happened tonight as well, how are you as far as let me say this as a wellness check. How are you feeling about overall now with this team coming out of the break, even though it's one game?
I think the break was necessary. I think just the nature of the style of play that the Panthers, their style of play, it naturally takes a toll on the body. The Panthers are a really fast and physical team. So I think from that standpoint, they needed the rest. I think the break was good for them where that's concerned. You never want to hit a break when you're losing or when you have momentum and you're on a winning streak. That's unlucky. It's almost like in the NFL when you hit your bye week after a really big divisional opponent win. You hate that as a fan. Players, they don't necessarily think about it too much, but you can kind of feel the momentum shift. And it's a team like Philly. It's good for them because they're on a skid, and you get to put a stop to it immediately, regroup, get some practice time, and you saw the result of that. But I do think overall it's good. My concern level, I feel okay about where they are. They've proven to be a consistently good 5-on-5 team. They'll figure it out at 5-on-5. The power play has been good. You just need 5-on-5 and power play to be working well at the same time. Barkov concerns me a little bit because of his goalless drought, but it's not like he's playing bad hockey. He just hasn't scored. He had an injury in the middle of that. He's racking up the assists. He's not playing bad hockey. The goals are going to come, so I'm not too concerned about that. My biggest concern right now is regular season effort level. We've seen this happen sometimes where teams that go on deep playoff runs that are consistently in the playoffs, or teams that get close to a Stanley Cup, regular season almost becomes a little bit more trivial, and all they think about, all they care about is playoff hockey. And regular season games may not take as much meaning to them, but you still have to get in those good habits. And the Panthers really haven't really hit a consistent stride with that. We've seen stretches. We've seen losing streaks followed by winning streaks, followed by a losing streak, and then a winning streak. The highs and lows, the ups and downs, you'd like to get a little bit more stability going into the postseason. So I think they need to work on bringing the same game every single night. We haven't seen that as much this year. And that's what I'm looking for the second half. And depth scoring is starting to become a real big concern. I question Paul Maurice's decision a little bit of putting Nick Cousins back in Mackey's spot, given that the Panthers were on a winning streak and the lines were very balanced. The offense may not have been a ton of 5-on-5 scoring, but the chances were a lot greater than what we saw tonight. It's a toss up. I know Cousins was ready. He played a pretty solid game. His line mates didn't really give him any kind of help or finish the chances he created. But for me, I personally would have stuck with the lineup that was winning. Until you lose a game, I don't think you make a change. And I think you roll with what was working. But we're splitting hairs when it's a 1-goal game. So it's a toss up whether or not that would have made a difference. Depth scoring, though, it's going to have to be addressed. And if Mackey is not a guy you think can produce in the playoffs right now, as a young prospect, if you don't think he can produce in the playoffs, it's definitely, we're getting to the time of year where you got to start looking at a trade deadline rental option, someone that can come in and help on the third line. And every contender does this. You have to add something at the deadline. No team is perfect. There's going to be a hole somewhere that you have to fill. And the Panthers, their one weakness really is that depth scoring. I think they got to figure that out. And then just playing better at home. They seem really comfortable and focused on the road. I feel like there's a little bit of a comfort level at home that can be negative sometimes, where you're so familiar and you might not take things as seriously at home, and you feel good about playing on your home ice, and sometimes you fall asleep a little bit. And I think with the Avalanche coming to town, with Washington coming to town this month, the Panthers get Ottawa, which those games tend to get pretty intense. And then a lot of Atlantic Division games this month. You got to take care of your business at home, because these away games are not easy. Pittsburgh, Tampa, Carolina, all on the road this month. So you got to take care of business at home, and they got to get more consistent on their own home ice. So those are really my only two areas of concern. It's depth scoring and it's consistency on home ice, because if the Panthers continue the way they're going, they will have home ice in the first round of the playoffs, and you don't want to drop games on your own home ice.
And 14-8-2 now for the Panthers this season, while 17-7-2 on the road. So just a flip of the switch, not necessarily a flip of the switch. Those are wrong words for me to use, but we've seen better play on the road for the Cats. And also, morning skates are now at Fort Lauderdale in the War Memorial.
Right.
I thought that this morning's morning skate was just a one-time thing, but then they spoke about in the press, in the media availability, how it's going to be a thing. And honestly, when it comes to commute time to the arena, back to their house for a nap and then back, this could be beneficial. But could this create an opportunity to be more comfortable? It being that close to home as well. Only time will tell. And obviously, I'm not going to speculate on what these guys do in their personal lives outside of the rink as well, but just something to consider now that morning skates are going to be at War Memorial now. So that's something to look out for. But Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, as the Florida Panthers drop their first game out of the All-Star break against the Philadelphia Flyers by a final of 2-1 at home. And they will be back on the ice on Thursday against the Washington Capitals, but also back at practice tomorrow from War Memorial as well. Any final words before we sign off, my friend?
Honestly, I think there's going to be a lot of frustration. People get really excited, especially after a long layoff. You want to see your team come out hot. I definitely was frustrated watching the game. There was a lot of frustration in the building. But this is still a very good team. This is a team near the top of the standings. This is a team that's going to make moves at the deadline. This is a team that has every intention of contending for another Stanley Cup. So I think if the players are going to try to stay even keel and not get too high or low, I think as fans we got to enjoy that ride and try to stay level-headed as well, because it's not linear. It's ups and downs, and Stanley Cup playoffs are a bumpy ride. So let's get in those habits now.
No doubt. Great way to end that, my friend. You can follow him on X at Jacob Winans 8. You can follow all of his live tweeting throughout every Panthers game as well. Jacob, thank you so much, and I will see you next week, my friend.
Looking forward to it. Thanks.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.